What's good, everyone? Welcome back to the show, man. Recap with Mo, where we getting ready to get into another episode breakdown of all the Queens men, all right? But before we get into this thing, make sure to like and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss shiznit that's going down right here, all right? So the episode we getting ready to get into is Season 3, Episode number 4, titled The Choice Is Yours, all right? So the synopsis for this episode states that Amp advises Frago to stay in line. Madam gets a lead on her stolen bills. Casanova takes a dangerous risk, and Trouble must decide how far she's going to prove herself to Madam. Now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this thing. All right, so we kicked this episode off with Tommy and Blue. They still out in the parking lot because, in the previous episode, the car blew up and shit. And Blue is like, shit, I don't even know if I need to take my ride because it might be rigged. So Tommy's like, shit, you can ride with me. So, of course, Blue is just sitting there. He was like, look, bring your ass on because I ain't trying to hear from Madam. And she'd be pissed off if I left you here in the parking lot or whatnot. She was like, you definitely right about that. But she still didn't trust if his car was rigged or not. But Tommy conveys to her, he was like, look, I got a camera and shit on my car. Like, I would know if something is about to go down with my car. So, no, I'm good, all right? Don't nobody want these problems, all right? So going on from there, we see Casanova down at the jailhouse still talking. He's talking to Detective Davis and Watt, and they're like, look, what you want us to do? Davis is like, I could keep holding him here. Watt is like, lock his ass up. Casanova's like, no, give me another chance. I promise I'm going to go out here. I'm going to get some information for you or whatnot. And they was like, okay, we're going to give you 24 hours to come up with some evidence, some solid evidence that we can lay down on Madam, because as of right now, you have yet to give us any damn thing. So Davis is reluctant on letting him go, but of course she's going off of what Watt is telling her, so she decides to let him go as well. When he's getting ready to leave, there's a lady down at the spot, this dark-skinned chick. She's down at the spot, and she sees him leaving or whatnot, or them calling him by his name as well, and she picks up her phone and starts to call. I was like, hell, who is that? So anyhow, next thing we see is Trouble and Rayshawn. Now, Trouble has decided to allow Rayshawn to spend the night with her because, as you already know, he has nowhere to live. He done messed up things with his fiance. He done messed things up with every damn body. So right now, he's just pretty much a rolling stone right now. Doo-doo. 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 Hey. Yeah, that's exactly what he is. Anyhow, so while she's there, she's getting ready to get off her little spider or whatnot, and she receives a phone call from old girl down at the police station. She says, hey, old boy, we was getting in, we were getting ready to get into a little bit. He was down here at the police station. This is a cop. And she was like, you lying. So anyhow, you already know how Trouble is. She wants to get on Madam's good side by any means necessary. So once she found out that little bit of information, she was like, look, let's go ahead and jump back on this thing. Let's ride out and go see Madam. Well, of course, Rayshawn is like, look, let me back into the apartment or whatnot. She was like, look, I don't trust you like that. He was like, look, I'll go in there and cook a little bit. She was like, you gonna cook? He was like, yeah, some ice cream. And she was like, man, get on up out of here, man. Going on from there, we see Blue and Trouble. Now, Blue is still upset. She's still mad as hell about the whole situation that just went down in the parking lot. Tommy's like, look, you just need to let it go. You need to stand down and do what Madam has conveyed to you. But she was like, look, I can't let it go. You know what I'm saying? I got to get this back, all right? So anyhow, from there, Blue receives a phone call from Fernando telling her that he wants to see her in person. So she was like, well, just go ahead and text me your address. He was like, done. So anyhow, they go back and forth. Whoop, whoop, whoop. He was like, look, my dogs they haven't eaten in a while, whatnot. So I guess he's threatening her, telling her, when you come over here, you're going to be fed to my dogs. That's pretty much essentially what I take from that, all right? So anyhow, going on from there, we see, where do we head? Oh, yeah, we head back over to the police station. Now we see a conversation going on between Davis and Watt. So we find out a little bit more about Watt. Watt is really, he's trying to be reelected into his role. He's trying to get a promotion. He also states that Davis is trying to get a promotion. And you promised that this would be the one that would get me to be reelected or get a promotion, and for you the very same. But he was like, unfortunately, you have yet to do that. He was like, look, you got to do something different, because as of right now, ain't nothing moving right now. She was like, look, just give me the time. We're going to get it done. So anyhow, going on from there, we see Tommy and Blue. So Tommy is telling Blue that, hey, in the guest bedroom, we got some fresh linen on there. And by the way, we have a touch of lilac powder sprinkled on the sheets. And of course, he tells her about this thing that he has fixed up, this food or something like that he's fixed up. And Blue is and Blue is looking at his ass like, bro, I don't even know who the hell you are right now. Because 1 minute, Tommy is about to kill somebody, and the next minute, he's about to, go over here and be Chef Boyardee in the kitchen. So you just never know. You just never know what to expect about him, man. But anyhow, he tells her pretty much, hey, just go ahead and take your ass to bed or whatnot, and you better not try to sneak up out of here. So anyhow, going on from there, we head over to Amp's crib, where we see he is sitting, he getting his drink on, and Alfredo shows up. And, they pretty much just, shoot the bobo a little bit. They had this little conversation where, Amp is just telling him about all the shit he's done. Like, you don't want to go to prison. It's a bad place, whoop, whoop, whoop. And Alonzo was like, I mean, what's going on? Like, you seem like you got some stuff on your chest, like you trying to get off or whatnot. So Amp pretty much tells him about everything that has gone down, from the situation where he was in the car accident, from the situation in the club, which he absolutely knew nothing about. He was like, oh yeah, man, I was drunk, I was this, and I was just going a little bit too hard until I got into that shower and I was banging her up against the wall, whoop, whoop, whoop. Next thing you know, she was unalived or whatnot. So going on from there, Alfredo was like, for real, like, he didn't know any of this, all right? So he's like, okay, let me calm down real quick. And Amp's advice to him is like, look, ain't no way to avoid this situation, man. You in it. You just need to dance and forget about the rest of this. Forget about it all and just do what you need to do. You know what I'm saying? To stay alive and survive. And then he also tells him about the spot down in the basement where Madam does her due, you know what I'm saying, without any questions, all right? No hesitation at all. So Alfredo is like, what the hell, like, for real? He was like, yeah, you didn't know that was down there? He was like, yeah, she got a whole situation down there. So anyhow, going on from there, we head over back to Madam's crib, where we see Madam is talking on the phone with Doc. Now, Doc just so happens to be at the club, and he's calling to inform her that he is yet to see the governor's daughter. She was like, well, I need you to just stay there, be patient. But while he's there, he just so happens to see Detective Davis, and he says she looked like she's on one, like she's a little tipsy right now. And she was like, oh, okay, well, don't go nowhere, because he was trying to leave. She was like, no, just sit right there, keep me on the phone, put me in your pocket. So that's what he does, so she can overhear the conversation. So when Doc sees her, she comes over straight towards him, right? So anyhow, she goes on to tell him, that we're going to get your boss. We got too much on her. So Doc is like, look, like, you're doing a little bit too much right now, detective, because what if she ain't got nothing on her? Like, she ain't that type of person. She was like, the hell with that. Like, we already know what type of person she is. So anyhow, while she's there, Doc is like, he takes this opportunity because she's looking good, by the way. He gets up on her, and she was like, look, if you don't get that thing up off my knee. He was like, well, why don't you move your knee? She was like, no, you move that thing. He was like, no, you move your knee. And he was like, obviously, you don't want to move that knee. Let's go ahead and take it to the next level. So anyhow, his plan is to see how far he can get with the detective. And Madam is like, look, when she leaves, like, hey, keep doing what you're doing, but don't push too hard because she might not sway that way. But truth be told, man, I honestly believe that eventually Doc is going to be able to get to her. There's only so much you can handle, all right? So anyhow, going on from there, we head over to the gym where we see Midnight and Babyface. So they're in the gym working out, and they're just having this whole little sideline conversation about what went down with Alonzo in the jailhouse. And Midnight was like, y'all really was going to unalive? Like, y'all were really going to do, Alonzo in or whatnot? He was like, yeah, I mean, we had orders. And Midnight was like, come on, bro, he ain't going to do nothing. Like, for real, like, he's soft. And he was like, well, Babyface was like, well, he did put up a fight for real, for real. So anyhow, while they were in the midst of this conversation, this chocolate tender showed up, and she was like, hey, Midnight, are you going to be available tonight or whatnot? He was like, yeah. She was like, yeah, well, I'll see you at the club. So now I'm intrigued as hell because, as you recall, in the previous episode, remember Blue, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but Blue was talking about the money was funny. That money just so happens to be Madam's, and this young lady just so happened to see Midnight the previous night. So I'm like, okay, maybe old girl may have something or know something about the money that is missing, all right? So anyhow, going on from there, we see Madam coming through her crib, and Tommy and Blue are patiently waiting on her arrival. And once she shows up into the room, she could tell something is wrong. And Tommy and Blue are ready to explain what went down last night. But unfortunately, Joey has already beaten them to the punch because Madam is like, oh, you talking about the car that blew up in the parking lot? They was like, how you know about that? Joey. Oh, you talking about the girl in the car? Oh, yeah, Joey. Well, how you know about that? Joey. So, of course, Tommy is sick to his stomach with that look on his face because he was like, hell to the no, this dude has done it again. I was trying to tell Madam about this. Now, all of a sudden, he's already telling the news. I'm her number one guy. All right? So, anyhow, going on from there, Madam is like, okay, so tell me, Blue, what's going on? Blue goes on to tell her about the whole situation with Fernando, how he had his wife in the car, blew her up, whoop, whoop, whoop. But she goes on to tell her that he also sent a text message with the address where he wanted to meet with Blue. Madam is like, okay, are you talking about over at the penthouse? Blue is like, no, not at the penthouse. She was like, well, where? She says, over on Peachwood and Martin. She was like, oh, that's in the hood. Like, for real? She was like, well, that's where you want to meet. So, obviously, Madam knows about that area because she owns the block over there. So, she's quite familiar with it. So, I'm intrigued on how that's going to go as well. So, anyhow, going on from there. Okay, so next she tells her about Midnight. And she was like, okay, what about Midnight? She was like, look, the money that Midnight came in and dropped off at, when they check in at night, was your money. She was like, huh? She was like, yeah, it was your money. I checked it. It was your money. Tommy's like, I'm going to kill him. She was like, hold on. I've already tried to do that with my nephew. We found out that was a messed up situation. We just not going to just start unaliving people just because that's what we think is best, all right? So anyhow, she says we're going to hold off on that because Midnight ain't that type of dude, all right? So that's what brings me back to old girl, because if she is the one that's hooking him up, maybe she got the money or she knows where the money is coming from, all right? So anyhow, going on from there, we head back over at Club Eden where we see D coming in, and he's still trying to holler at DJ Dime, and he's saying to her like, hey, I got this new track, this new joint, I got this new dance routine I want you to check out. So he's still trying to shoot his shot. And unfortunately for him, her feelings ain't there. She's just using him to get what she wants from Amp, to get that rise out of Amp. And it's going to end up getting him in a little bit of a situation. I can already tell from the response that Amp has been giving him, as well as he himself had been giving Amp. Because in one of the scenes on this episode, when he's doing his dance routine, he brings Dime up on the stage with a chair. She doesn't really seem like she's interested in all until Amp shows up with El Fuego. Now, when he shows up, she's all in, she's pulling, she's tugging, she's grinding, all that shit. But once Amp is gone and he says, F you, Dime, everything is out the window. She was like, hey, get up off, whatever. So at this point, I don't know what old boy D is trying to do, but at this point, you're not winning, bro. So you need to let it go. Like, you might be able to tease her a little bit, but her heart is with Amp. Now, anyhow, going on from there, we could talk about that a little bit later. Tommy sees Casanova coming in with his bags. He was like, hell, where you going? He was like, oh, I'm going back to the back. He was like, oh, so you just think you got a job left over, when you didn't even show up previously, right? And he was like, oh, man, I was out sick or whatnot. He was like, okay, well, you go ahead and go to the back. So anyhow, you already knew he was going to go ahead and call Madam when he saw old boy show up. So he goes ahead and calls Madam, tells her about the situation about Casanova showing up. She said, oh, cool. Go ahead and tell him to meet me back in my office. He was like, okay. Meanwhile, outside, Madam is showing up and she's getting ready to come in, and Trouble is outside as well. So, of course, Trouble wants to tell her what she's found out about Casanova. So, anyhow, Madam is like, look, Trouble, I ain't got time for this shit right now. Trouble's like, look, this is very important, Madam. I think you want to hear this. So, anyhow, she sends the security guard off and she has this conversation with Trouble and whatnot. So Trouble goes on to tell her that, hey, one of her girls were down at the jailhouse. She overheard the conversation, heard them call him by his name, and he's a cop. She was like, well, how do you know that? And then she goes into a little more detail. She was like, okay, well, I appreciate that intel, all right? So anyhow, Trouble is excited as hell, and she feels like she's getting to where she needs to get to. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So anyhow, going on from there, we head back into the club and we see Tommy, of course, going into the dressing room to inform Casanova that his ass is needed in the office of Madam, all right? So anyhow, while he's in there, Rayshonda's like, hey, Tommy. Of course, Tommy don't like nobody, but he definitely don't have no type of feelings towards Rayshawn, all right? So Rayshonda's like, hey, have you heard from Trouble? Like, bro, why are you even mentioning Trouble at this point? Like, why are you bringing up Trouble in this situation right here? See, that's the reason why people don't like you, Rayshawn, because you open your damn mouth when it does not need to be open. See, that's how you get in a whole lot of shit. But anyhow, going on from there, Trouble lets him go. He don't get up into him too much. Old boy tries to tell him in the dressing room that he ain't wrapped too tight. He got a plate in his head. And Rayshawn is like, for real? He was like, next time, watch him when he goes to a metal detector. So anyhow, going on from there, old boy shows up into the office, right? So when he shows up into the office, Madam is like, okay, so what can you share with me? Because she already knows he's a cop. The information that Trouble shared with her didn't mean a thing for her. It just showed that she was on her side. So he was like, hey, I got this, I got that. She was like, look, you telling me everything that I already know. What you telling me ain't helping me worth the shit. Like, I need you to give me a little more information. What do you have? He's like, oh, well, I deleted some files. She was like, whoop-de-doo. But what else can you do for me? So anyhow, while he's in there, she was like, look, you acting a little funny, all right? He was like, look, I ain't got nothing on me. I'm here, I'm dedicated to you. I'm just trying to help you out. I'm trying to help I'm trying to just work all of this out for everybody. And she was like, okay, strip down then. So he strips down naked right there in front of Madam. Madam was like, you know what this is right here? She turns the computer screen around and shows this man a scrambler on her computer. She said, as soon as you walked into this door, it went off. So that means you got something on you that you are listening, that they're able to listen to this conversation from. And Of course, Madam don't go down without a fight. They pull out this little magnetic piece, put it in his ear, pull out the earbud. That man has it down in his earlobe. I was like, hell. She was like, oh, they don't want high tech on me. I was like, they sure did, Madam. Shit, I became Tommy for a little bit. So they took the earpiece out, and she said, take that downstairs to the basement. I was like, oh, hell no. You already know what goes down in the basement, all right? And I ain't talking about the DMs. I'm talking about what goes down in the basement at Madam's crib, all right? So anyhow, going on from there, Tommy leaves, and let me go ahead and skip to this part, and then we'll end it on this. So Madam receives a phone call from concierge telling her that she wasn't on the plane. He's on his way back from Mexico, and she didn't make the flight. She was like, look, I've already told you that I wasn't going to make that flight because I wasn't coming. He was like, okay, well, you got a lot of people mad, and he gave me a mandate. She was like, oh, a mandate? He was like, yeah, one of two. She was like, okay, well, what's the first one? He was like, well, the first one is that there's going to be a reckoning. And she was like, okay. And she was like, what about it? He was like, well, that we're going to touch something that you hold dear to you. She was like, well, that's going to be difficult because I don't hold shit dear to me. And we know that's not true because she holds her father very dear. Now, if they were to get her sister, I don't know how much intel they have on that, but I don't think she would give two, you know what I'm saying, two hockey sticks towards that. But anyhow, we know that's not true. All right. So secondly, he says the other part of the mandate is he tells her that either you or someone that you love will be hung from a bridge in the afternoon sun when it's hot as hell outside, pretty much in the noonday. All right. When the sun is right over your head. So that stings her a little bit. You can tell by her expression. But anyhow, from there, she was like, look, okay, that's it. I ain't afraid of y'all. So I don't know what's about to I don't know what's about to go down with Madam, but anyhow, I am intrigued, all right? So going on from there, Tommy and Trouble are into it in the hallway, and Madam comes out and she was like, what the hell is going on right here? Tommy is telling her, look, I done told old girl, old boy to go on back to the, go on back out there to the dance floor. She was like, look, Madam, I'm trying to plead my case right here. I deserve to have my own solo performance out there on that stage. I deserve that I prove to you that I am loyal. She was like, you're right. So she was like, okay, I'll give you your own solo, stage opportunity. But I got something that I need you to do. She was like, word, okay, I'm good with that. So she said, follow me. They head down to the basement. Well, we all know things go down in the basement. So when they get down to the basement, we see Casanova tied up, sitting in a chair. So when Madam and Tommy come in, they quiet. But when Trouble comes in and she sees old boy leaned over in the chair, she goes in on him. I ain't never liked you. I ain't did this. You ain't did that. You ain't worth this. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And Madam was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, you ain't never liked them? She was like, no, I ain't never liked them. She was like, cool. So she reaches over real suave like, and she gives her the piece. All right. And Trouble was like, oh, what is this? She was like, oh, you ain't never liked them. She was like, no. She was like, go ahead and do them in then. She was like, hold on, Madam. Hold on, Trouble. You've been talking all this time. You've been loyal. All right. So if you've been loyal, this is your time and your opportunity to go on out here and do what you need to do for Madam to really prove that you're loyal to her at this point. Because all this stuff you're doing right now has been lip service. Yeah, the high speed chase, all that stuff was good, but you ain't got no blood on you. Ooh. You ain't got no blood on you, Trouble. So right now, what you gonna do? All right, so that's pretty much the end of the episode, man. Let me know down below what you guys thought about this recap, this review. As always, thank you for tuning in. If you've stayed this long, please like and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss shiznit that's going down right here. Of course, I got some other things dropping, and I'll share that with you guys soon. Peace.